Imagine for a moment that you're 20 years old. Your name is Max Klein, and you're looking at a bank account with only $100. Now imagine that 5 years later, this same young man is sitting in a penthouse in Miami, looking at a cryptocurrency portfolio valued at $17 million. This isn't fiction. This isn't luck. And by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly how Max Klein transformed $100 into a fortune that changed not only his life, but the lives of his entire family. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you think you know about money, investments, and the power of cryptocurrencies. Get ready, because Max Klein's journey will show you that sometimes the greatest opportunities come disguised as the biggest risks. It was March 2019, and Max Klein was living what millions of young adults know all too well: the brutal reality of trying to survive on minimum wage. At 20 years old, he worked at a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, waking up at 5 in the morning every day to open the store. His hands were always stained with coffee, his sneakers had holes, and at the end of the month, after paying rent for a tiny apartment he shared with 2 roommates, practically nothing was left. Max wasn't different from millions of young people. He had big dreams, but a financial reality that seemed impossible to escape. Every night after a 12-hour shift, Max came home exhausted, but always found energy for one thing: studying. Not in college. He didn't have money for that. Max studied on his own, devouring books about economics, finance, anything that could teach him how people really got rich. He knew he didn't want to spend his entire life serving coffee, but couldn't see a clear way out of the poverty cycle he was trapped in. It was on one of those study nights that Max first stumbled upon something that would change his life forever: Bitcoin. It was an obscure article in an investment forum, talking about a digital currency that had been created by someone called Satoshi Nakamoto. At first, Max thought it was some kind of scheme. Digital money? Created by computers? It seemed like science fiction movie stuff. But something about the technology behind Bitcoin, the blockchain, captured his imagination. Max began researching obsessively. He read about Bitcoin during work breaks, watched YouTube videos until late hours, participated in online forums where people discussed this new form of money. The more he learned, the more he realized he was looking at something revolutionary. It wasn't just a new form of payment. It was a technology that could fundamentally change how the world worked. But there was a problem. Max didn't have money to invest. His $100 in savings was literally everything he had in the world. It was the money he kept for emergencies in case he got sick or lost his job. Investing this money in something as risky as Bitcoin seemed like madness. His parents, when he mentioned the idea, were horrified. "Max, this is a scheme," said his mother. "You're going to lose everything you have." His friends laughed at him. "Digital money? That's not real, man." But Max couldn't get Bitcoin out of his head. He saw something others didn't see. He understood he was looking at the future of money, and that he was arriving early to the party. In April 2019, after weeks of internal debate, Max made the decision that would change his life. He took his $100 and bought Bitcoin. At that time, Bitcoin was trading at around $5,000 per coin. With his $100, Max managed to buy 0.02 Bitcoin. It didn't seem like much, but for him, it represented everything. It was his bet on the future, his attempt to break the poverty cycle that had defined his life until then. The first months were an emotional roller coaster that almost destroyed Max psychologically. Bitcoin didn't rise immediately. In fact, in the first 3 months after Max invested, the price dropped to around $3,500. This meant his $100 was now worth only $70. Max remembers staying awake at night, looking at charts on his broken phone, wondering if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Everyone around him seemed to take pleasure in reminding him of his mistake. "I told you so," said his mother. "You should have saved that money." His co-workers made jokes about the Bitcoin investor who was losing money. There were moments when Max almost sold everything, just to stop the emotional pain of seeing his small investment shrink day after day. But Max had something most people don't have: deep conviction based on knowledge. He hadn't invested in Bitcoin on impulse or because someone told him to do it. He had studied the technology, understood the potential, and more importantly, he believed he was looking at the future. So instead of selling, Max did something few have the courage to do. He doubled down. During the rest of 2019, Max began living even more frugally than before. He stopped going out with friends, stopped buying anything that wasn't absolutely essential, and started working extra shifts whenever possible. Every extra dollar he could save, he invested in Bitcoin. Some months he could only invest $20. Other months he managed $50. But he never stopped. Max also began diversifying within the cryptocurrency world. He studied other digital currencies, Ethereum, Litecoin, some smaller coins he believed had potential. He learned about different investment strategies, about how to read charts, about market psychology. Max transformed his small apartment into a personal cryptocurrency university. The year 2020 brought the pandemic, and with it, a fundamental change in public perception about digital money. Suddenly, with governments printing trillions of dollars and the traditional economy collapsing, Bitcoin began to be seen not as a risky experiment, but as a digital store of value. The price began to rise, slowly at first, then more rapidly. Max watched, fascinated and terrified, as his small portfolio began to grow. In December 2020, Bitcoin reached $20,000 for the first time in history. Max's initial $100 investment was now worth $400. But this was just the beginning. 2021 was the year that changed everything. Bitcoin exploded to $40,000, then $50,000, and finally reached a peak of almost $70,000 in November. But it wasn't just Bitcoin that made Max rich. His other cryptocurrencies also exploded in value. Ethereum, which he had bought for $200, reached over $4,000. Some of the smaller coins he had invested in increased by 1,000% or more. But here's what really separated Max from most people who invested in cryptocurrencies. He did not sell. While others were panic selling during drops or selling too early during rises, Max maintained his long-term strategy. He understood he was participating in a technological revolution that would take decades to fully develop. Max was also smart about how he managed his new wealth. He didn't go out buying expensive cars or move to a mansion. Instead, he continued living modestly, reinvesting most of his gains and diversifying into other assets. He bought real estate, invested in technology company stocks, and even started his own business. A consultancy that helps other people understand and invest in cryptocurrencies. Today, at 25 years old, Max Klein has a net worth of over $17 million. He left the coffee shop in Portland and now lives in Miami, where he manages his investments and business. But what's most impressive about Max is not the numbers in his bank account. It's how he transformed not just his own life, but the lives of his entire family. Max paid off his parents' debts, bought them a house, and is paying for his younger sister's college. He created an emergency fund for his family that ensures they'll never have to worry about money again. But perhaps most importantly, Max proved something fundamental: that with knowledge, courage, and perseverance, it's possible to break any cycle of poverty. The lessons from Max Klein's journey are profound and applicable to anyone who wants to change their financial situation. First lesson: education is everything. Max didn't blindly invest in Bitcoin. He studied, researched, and understood the technology before risking his money. Second lesson, timing is important, but conviction is even more important. Max invested early, but what really made the difference was his ability to hold his investments during difficult times. Third lesson, small consistent investments can lead to extraordinary results. Max did not start with thousands of dollars. He started with 100 and continued investing small amounts regularly. Fourth lesson, diversification within a growing sector can multiply results. Max didn't put everything in Bitcoin. He studied and invested in several different cryptocurrencies. Fifth, and perhaps most important lesson, courage to act when others doubted was what separated Max from millions of other people who heard about Bitcoin at the same time, but never did anything. Max had the courage to risk everything he had on something he believed in, even when everyone around him said he was crazy. Max Klein's story isn't just about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. It's about the transformative power of recognizing opportunities before they become obvious to everyone. It's about having the courage to act based on your convictions, even when the entire world is telling you you're wrong. It's about understanding that the greatest fortunes are built by people who see the future before it arrives. Today, as Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies continue to evolve and mature, the question isn't whether this technology will change the world. The question is whether you'll be one of the people who benefits from this change or one of the people left behind. Wishing you had the courage to act when there was still time. Max Klein's journey from $100 to $17 million wasn't luck. It was the result of education, courage, perseverance, and vision. And the most incredible thing is that this opportunity still exists today. Cryptocurrencies are still in their early stages. Blockchain technology is still transforming industries. And there's still time for brave people like Max Klein to build fortunes that will change their lives forever. If Max Klein's story inspired you, if you want to learn more about how cryptocurrencies can transform your financial life, make sure to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Because stories like this aren't exceptions. They are examples of what's possible when you combine knowledge with courage and act when others only dream.